Before I actually read this transcript, I want to kind of talk about elements that I'm adding into this series. So I've done a few videos, debunking things. I've done videos about critical thinking, and basically I'm trying to bring that into what I'm doing here and using logic and not just, rebutting with things that I can't prove. So a big one for me is discourse and understanding what an answer is in discourse and understanding what an answer is not. And here in this Minisode, I'm calling this deflection in discourse. So basically, this stars none other than Bridget Gabriel, who proclaimed, quote, conservative against Islamic supremacism, according to the website Conservapedia. While white supremacism is accepted by 99% of mainstream scholars today, things like Islamic supremacism and Jewish supremacism are not yet staples of supremacism. Therefore, we should only consider Islamic supremacism theoretical. Be that as it may, I was drawn into this video on YouTube while trying to hunt down another video I had previously watched. This video was released by CNS News, a division of the Media Research Center. The center's mission is to, quote, prove through sound scientific research that liberal bias in the media doesn't exist and undermines traditional American values, clearly denoting a common stance of the far right and thus self-identifying with the far right. I give no more credence to that argument than I give to claims that all media is conservatively biased. Here's the clip I saw entitled Muslim Woman Asks a Question and Probably Wishes She Didn't.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace to you all. My name is Saba Ahmed. I'm a law student at American University. I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. What I find so amazing is since the beginning of this panel, which we are here about Benghazi attack against our people, not one person mentioned Muslims. We are here against Islam, or we're launching war against Muslims. We are here to discuss how 4 Americans died and what our government is doing. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25% according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big of the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died. Almost 14 million in concentration camps. 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative, save the applause till the end. Thank you. And since you're the only Muslim representative in here, you took the limelight instead of speaking about why our government, and I assume, are you an American? You're an American citizen. So as an American citizen, you sat in this room and instead of standing up and saying a question or asking something about our 4 Americans that died and what our government is doing to correct the problem, you stood there to make a point about peaceful, moderate Muslims. I wish you brought 10 with you to question about how we can hold our government responsible. It is time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs and start calling it fair.
You can clearly hear the questioner make a few points. First, she says that Muslims are sometimes seen as, quote, bad in the West, and points out that they're not even represented at the event. And then to directly quote her, she says, but my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? So that was the actual question. After all that obligatory politeness, Gabriel goes into an animated lecture on exactly how many Muslims are considered radical, how many are not. This completely evades the question asked. How can we fight an ideological war with weapons? So, there are still people, namely the user who posted this video and titled it, believes that this is still a valid answer, not because it actually answers the question, but because it suits their own views, basically. How can someone completely miss the non sequitur answer that was given is beyond me. So, when listening to anyone pro or anti anything, answer a direct question. Pay attention to the original question asked. This is just another reminder to think critically.